You're driving home late at night. Your music is low. And suddenly, those flashing blue and red lights appear in your rearview mirror. Your heart drops. You pull over, roll down the window, and before you can even hand over your license, the officer leans in, sniffs the air, and says those dreaded words, "I smell marijuana." In that exact moment, your constitutional rights and your future are hanging in the balance. And what you say next will determine whether you go home or end up in the back of a squad car. Most people panic. They start talking. They start apologizing. Or worse, they give up their rights because they think the officer already has them cornered. But as a lawyer, I'm here to tell you that the "I smell weed" line is one of the most complex and legally volatile tools in a police officer's arsenal. And knowing the countermoves can change everything. Tonight, we are breaking down exactly how to handle this situation, what the law actually says about that invisible smell, and how you can protect yourself without escalating a tense encounter into a disaster. Let's get one thing straight right out of the gate. The smell of marijuana has historically been the magic wand for law enforcement. Under the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, you are protected against unreasonable searches and seizures. Generally, for the police to search your car, they need a warrant or probable cause. Probable cause is a high legal standard. It means there are enough facts to lead a reasonable person to believe that a crime is being committed, or that evidence of a crime is inside the vehicle. For decades, courts across the country have ruled that the plain smell of marijuana alone is enough to establish that probable cause. It's called the plain smell doctrine. If an officer says they smell it, they suddenly have a key to your trunk, your glove box, and every backpack in the back seat. But the world is changing, and the law is shifting beneath our feet. With the legalization of hemp and the decriminalization of recreational marijuana in dozens of states, that magic wand is starting to lose its power. Think about it. Hemp looks like weed, and most importantly, it smells exactly like weed. However, hemp is legal under federal and most state laws. If an officer says they smell marijuana, how can they possibly distinguish it from legal hemp? They can't. This has created a massive legal loophole that lawyers like me are using to fight cases every day. But you can't win the legal fight if you blow it on the side of the road. The first rule of engagement, when the officer says "I smell weed," is to stay calm and stay silent. I know it sounds cliché, but the biggest mistake people make is trying to explain the smell away. If you say, "Oh, that's just my friend who was in the car earlier," or "I just came from a concert," you have just admitted there is a smell. You have validated the officer's claim. Even if you think you're being helpful, you are giving them evidence that will be used against you in court. You need to remember that you are being recorded. Whether it's a body cam or a dash cam, every word is a permanent record. Instead of explaining, you need to use the magic words of the legal profession. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Say it clearly. Say it respectfully. You don't need to be aggressive, and you definitely shouldn't be combative. You are simply asserting a right. The officer might respond by saying, "Well, I smell it, so I'm going to search anyway." They might even tell you that if you don't consent, it will make things harder for you. Do not fall for this. Whether they search your car or not, your refusal of consent is your strongest defense later on. If they search your car without your consent and a judge later determines that the smell didn't constitute enough probable cause, everything they find could be thrown out of court under the exclusionary rule. If you say yes or "I guess so," you've waived that protection forever. Now, let's talk about the state-by-state breakdown, because where you are on the map changes the rules of the game. In states like New York, the law has been updated to explicitly state that the odor of burnt marijuana alone is not enough to justify a search of the trunk or the passenger compartment. In other states like Illinois or Massachusetts, the courts are moving in a similar direction. However, if you are in a state where it is still fully illegal, the old rules apply, and that smell is a one-way ticket to a searched vehicle. You need to know the specific laws of your jurisdiction, but your behavior on the side of the road should always be the same. Be polite, don't consent, and don't talk. Why do officers use the smell excuse so often? Because it's subjective. You can't take a picture of a smell. You can't record a smell on a body camera. It is a he said, she said situation where the court usually sides with the officer's training and experience. Officers are trained to say they smell burnt or raw marijuana. They use those specific words because they carry weight in a courtroom. If an officer says they smell raw marijuana, it suggests there is a large quantity of unsmoked product. If they say burnt, it suggests recent consumption. Both are used to justify dragging you out of the car. If the officer orders you out of the vehicle, you must comply. You do not have the right to refuse a lawful order to exit the car during a traffic stop. Do not resist, and do not keep your hands in your pockets. As you exit, roll up your windows and lock the door behind you if possible. This is a subtle but powerful way of signaling that you are not opening your private space to them. If they ask for your keys, give them up. But again, state clearly, I am complying with your order, but I do not consent to a search. One of the most common tactics officers use is the false choice. They'll say, look, if you have a little bit in here, just tell me now and I'll give you a ticket. But if I have to call the K9 and we find it, you're going to jail. This is almost always a bluff. They are trying to get you to confess, because a confession is better than a search. If you confess, your lawyer can't help you. Your lawyer has a fighting chance. Never ever take legal advice from an officer who is investigating you. Their goal is an arrest. Your goal is protection. Let's dive into the K9 aspect. If an officer says they are calling a drug-sniffing dog because they smell something, the clock starts ticking. According to the Supreme Court case Rodriguez v. United States, the police cannot prolong a traffic stop beyond the time it takes to handle the initial reason for the stop, just to wait for a dog. If you were pulled over for a broken taillight and the officer has finished writing the ticket but makes you wait 20 minutes for a K9 unit to arrive, that search might be unconstitutional. You should ask, "Officer, am I free to go?" Once the ticket is issued, they usually need additional reasonable suspicion to keep you there. If they say no, you are being detained. Ask why. Again, stay calm. If they force you to wait, your lawyer can challenge the duration of the stop later. What if there actually is a smell? Maybe you smoked earlier in the day, or you have a passenger who smells like it. In some states, if you have a medical marijuana card, the smell is no longer automatic probable cause. Why? Because the smell is now associated with a legal activity. If you have a prescription for a medication that smells a certain way, the police shouldn't be able to search your home just because they smell your medicine. The same logic is being applied to medical marijuana. You still cannot drive while impaired. If the officer smells weed and also notices you have bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, or poor motor skills, they now have evidence of a DUI, which is a whole different ballgame. It is vital to understand the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. If the initial reason for stopping you was invalid, say the officer lied about you swerving, then anything that happens after that, including the smell and the subsequent search, could be suppressed. This is why you never give up information. You might think you're in trouble because of what's in the car, but the officer might have made a procedural error that could get the whole case tossed out. Your job at the scene is to be the perfect defendant, quiet, respectful, and non-consenting. Let's talk about passengers. If you are a passenger in a car and the officer smells weed, they might try to search you personally. This is a pat-down or a Terry frisk. Generally, they can only frisk you for weapons to ensure officer safety. They are not supposed to go into your pockets for drugs unless they feel something that is immediately apparent as contraband. If they start digging in your pockets, say, "I do not consent to this search." They might do it anyway, but your vocal objection is what we need to fight it in court. Another huge factor is the plain view doctrine. This often gets confused with smell. If you have a baggie sitting in the cup holder and the officer sees it, it doesn't matter what they smell. Observation of contraband is instant probable cause. If you are going to carry legal products, keep them in the trunk or in a sealed, opaque container. If a cop can see it or smell it, you've increased your chances of a search by 10% to 100%. I often get asked, should I tell the cop I have a medical card right away? It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it explains the smell and shows you are a law-abiding patient. On the other hand, it's an admission that you possess marijuana. In many states, the safest move is to only provide your license and registration. If the officer asks about the smell, you can then present your medical card and say, "I am a legal patient, but I have not been consuming and I do not consent to a search." This protects your status while maintaining your rights. But what if the officer is lying? We have all seen videos where an officer claims to smell something that clearly isn't there just to get into a car. This is why dashcams are your best friend. If you have a camera recording the interaction and it shows you were driving perfectly, and the officer's story seems fabricated, it gives your lawyer a massive amount of ammunition. In the legal world, we call this contrived probable cause. If we can prove the officer used the smell as a pretext to search a car because they had a hunch but no evidence, the judge will not be happy. The reality of the street is different from the reality of the courtroom. On the street, the officer has the gun, the handcuffs, and the power. You are not going to win a legal argument on the side of the highway at 2 a.m. You will not convince the officer that they are wrong about the Fourth Amendment. Your goal is not to win the argument. It's to preserve your rights so your lawyer can win the argument later in front of a judge who actually knows the law. When people try to play jailhouse lawyer with a cop, they usually end up making statements that hurt their case. The less you say, the more I can do for you. Let's look at the officer's training excuse. In court, an officer will testify, "Based on my 10 years of experience and hundreds of marijuana arrests, I recognize the distinct odor of raw marijuana." This is a standard line. To counter this, we ask questions like, when was the last time you had your sense of smell tested? Or have you undergone any specific training to distinguish between legal hemp and illegal marijuana? The answer is no. By exposing the flaws in the smell test, we can cast doubt on the validity of the probable cause. Another thing to keep in mind is the search incident to arrest. If they smell weed and decide to arrest you for being under the influence, they then get to search your immediate wingspan in the car. This is why it's so important to not show signs of impairment. If you are stumbling or can't follow a pen with your eyes, you've given them a reason to arrest you, and once you're under arrest, the car is theirs. Stay alert, keep your hands on the wheel, and speak clearly. There's also the inventory search loophole. If your car is towed, the police are allowed to do an inventory of the contents to protect themselves from claims of stolen property. They will use this to find things they couldn't search for on the side of the road. This is why you want to avoid being arrested or having your car impounded at all costs. The best way to do that? Keep your vehicle in good working order so they don't have a reason to pull you over in the first place. No loud exhaust, no broken lights, no expired tags. Traffic stops are the primary way the smell issue even arises. In the legal community, we are seeing a massive shift in how these cases are handled. Some progressive prosecutors are even refusing to bring charges if the only evidence was found based on a smell search. They recognize that it's a subjective standard that is often abused. But you can't rely on having a progressive prosecutor. You have to assume you are in the toughest jurisdiction with the toughest judge. That means following the protocol perfectly. License and registration, silence, I do not consent, and am I free to go? Many people ask about scent-proof bags or sprays. While these might help avoid a stop, if an officer really wants to get into your car, they will claim they smell it through the bag. There is no such thing as a legally proof scent masking device. If they say they smell it, the law treats it as if they did, until a lawyer proves otherwise. Don't rely on gadgets. Rely on your rights. Let's talk about the psychological pressure. Officers are trained to be intimidating. They might tower over your window, they might use a harsh tone, or they might bring 2 or 3 backup officers to stand around your car. This is called the show of authority. It's designed to make you feel like you have no choice but to comply. They want you to feel small, so you forget you have the power of the Constitution behind you. Remember, the Bill of Rights doesn't vanish just because someone is yelling at you. You are a citizen, and you have protections that the officer is legally bound to respect, even if they don't want to. Another common trick: if you don't have anything to hide, why won't you let me look? This is a guilt trip. Turn it back on them politely. Officer, I respect the work you do, but I have a personal policy of never consenting to searches of my private property. It's not about having something to hide. It's about the principle of privacy. You wouldn't let a stranger walk into your house and look through your drawers just because you don't have anything to hide. So why let them do it to your car? One of the most important pieces of advice I can give you is to watch your passengers. You can be the most careful person in the world, but if your passenger has a bowl in their pocket or smells like a dispensary, you are the one who is going to get pulled over. You are responsible for the vehicle. Make it clear to anyone riding with you what the rules are. If they don't respect your rights, they don't get a ride. A favor for a friend can turn into a five-figure legal bill for you. What happens after the search? If they find something, do not start making deals. Don't say, "It's mine, not hers," or "I'm just holding it for someone." Every admission of ownership is a nail in your legal coffin. Wait until you are in a room with a lawyer. At that point, the officer will likely read you your Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. This is the most important right you have. Use it. Do not answer questions about where you got it, how long you've had it, or what you were doing with it. "I want my lawyer" is the only sentence that should come out of your mouth from that point forward. In the courtroom, we often challenge the reliability of the officer's nose. We call it the sniff test. We can bring in experts to talk about how odors dissipate in moving air, or how lingering odors from clothing can be mistaken for present odors in a vehicle. We look at the wind speed that night, the humidity, and the traffic volume. All of these factors can affect a person's ability to smell. If we can show that it was physically improbable for the officer to smell a small amount of weed from 3 feet away through a cracked window, the probable cause disappears. We also look at the officer's history. Is this an officer who has smelled weed in 500 stops but only found it in 10? That's a pattern of unreliable reporting. We can pull the records of an officer's previous stops to see if their nose is actually a tool for discrimination or just a lack of training. This is how we build a defense. We don't just look at what happened to you, we look at the system that allowed it to happen. The "I smell weed" situation is a classic example of the tension between public safety and individual liberty. If you are recorded being a jerk to the cop, yelling, using profanity, or being threatening, a judge is going to be much less sympathetic to your legal arguments later. They are human beings too. They want to see that you were a reasonable person who was simply asserting your rights. If you act like a criminal, they will treat you like one. If you act like an informed, respectful citizen, you are setting yourself up for success in the courtroom. Think of a traffic stop like a game of chess. The officer makes a move. "I smell marijuana." You make a move. "Officer, I don't consent to a search." The officer makes another move. "Step out of the car." You make a move. You step out, lock the door, and stay silent. If you follow the script, you are protecting your king. If you start moving your pieces randomly out of fear, you're going to get checkmated. It's also worth noting the Terry stop in the context of walking down the street. If a cop stops you on the sidewalk because they smell it, the rules are a bit different. They usually need reasonable suspicion to stop and talk to you. Most of the time, they will try to pat you down for safety. If you feel them reaching into your pockets, you should say, "I am not consenting to a search of my pockets." Again, don't fight them physically. Let the illegality of the search be the issue for the court. The evolution of the smell law is happening right now. Every month, there are new court rulings that change the landscape. It is your responsibility as a citizen to stay informed. But even as the laws move toward more protection, the side of the road reality remains high stakes. The police will always push the boundaries of their power. It's the nature of the job. It's up to you to push back with the shield of the law. Remember, the goal of these videos isn't to help people break the law. It's to ensure that everyone is treated fairly within the system. The Fourth Amendment wasn't written to protect bad people. It was written to protect all people from the overreach of the government. When you stand up for your rights during a traffic stop, you aren't just helping yourself. You are helping maintain the integrity of our legal system for everyone. In conclusion, if you hear those words, "I smell weed," don't panic. Take a deep breath. Remember that you have a lawyer in your head telling you what to do. Provide your documents. Refuse consent. Stay silent. Compliance is not the same as consent. You can be the most cooperative person in the world while still giving the police zero evidence to use against you. The power is in your hands, but only if you have the discipline to use it. Keep your car clean, keep your passengers in check, and keep your mouth shut. If things go sideways, that's what we are here for. We fight the battle in the courtroom so you don't have to fight it on the street. Stay safe, stay informed, and always remember your rights only work if you know how to use them. As you drive away from that stop, hopefully without a ticket or an arrest, you should feel a sense of pride that you handled a difficult situation with maturity and legal knowledge. You didn't let the magic wand of the smell trick you into giving up your freedom. You played the game by the rules, and you came out on top. That is the definition of a know your rights win. The legal system can be a maze, and the smell of marijuana is one of its most confusing turns. But with the right mindset and the right protocol, you can navigate it safely. Don't let a sniff turn into a search that changes your life. Be the person who knows the law, respects the process, but never wavers on their constitutional foundations. We'll be here to keep you updated as the laws continue to change. But for now, you have the tools you need to stay protected. Stay smart out there,